So as Mr. Leitzell, you indicated that you prepare some things. That's good. That elevator speech will come in handy. Telling me we're streaming live now.
I'm gonna take my glasses off because I can see
Okay.
close up. I can't see far away.
So we're beginning. Welcome, Gem City, to this first debate of the candidates that are vying for your vote in the mayor race. We have currently Mr. Bowers and Mr. Leitzell. We're waiting for our third candidate, Mr. Mims, but we don't want to belabor your time and effort in attending this live segment that is presented to you. So we want to move on. As I've already instructed to our candidates how this debate will go, I will ask an initial question that was pre-submitted by the West Side Democratic Club. The first candidate to respond will have 2 minutes. The other candidates will have 1 minute respectively, and then we will come back to the initial candidate for a 30-second rebuttal. Each question will conclude after 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Our candidates will see a timer. They will be notified of a beeping tone when it gets close to their time, and then as the last 10 seconds, that beeping tone will ring again and become a little bit louder. I do not want to be rude, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So if the candidate continues to talk, I will have you muted and we will go on to the next question.
Oh, that's rude.
Wonderful, wonderful. Once again, we want to thank the West Side Democratic Club for this opportunity with this Facebook Live debate. These candidates that are presented tonight would like to tell you a little bit about themselves and their platform as they vie for your vote for the office of mayor. So we're going to begin with Mr. Bowers. That is Mr. Rennes Bowers.
Yes,
you can go ahead and introduce yourself, Mr. Bowers.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Rennes Bowers and I'm running for mayor. I'm not a politician. I'm a career Dayton firefighter. I joined the Dayton Fire Department in 1989, progressed up through the ranks as lieutenant, firefighter, lieutenant, captain, retiring as a district chief 2 years ago. In the 2 years in which I've been retired, I've been focusing on developing relationships with Black pastors because I was convinced in my heart that the secret, that the solution to all this division in our country and all this division in our city is to get the faith community together. The Black pastors, the white pastors, the Black congregations, the white congregations, to bring them together to the table and just seek the Lord for unity. I hate division. I think that racism is a sin. It's in the heart of man. It has inflicted all of us, but it doesn't have to destroy our city. It doesn't have to destroy our country. So I'm running because my heart was deeply troubled by all the division in our country. I am a crisis manager. I've been doing crisis management for 30 years. I think our country is in a state of crisis. I think our city is in a state of crisis. We go to a fire, we can't pass the fire off to anybody else. We have to solve the problem. I am a problem solver. But my style of leadership, the greatest said, if you want to be a great leader, be the greatest servant of all. That was the Lord Jesus, and I model that. I'm a servant leader. I'm not somebody who's going to dictate to others. I want to bring the people to the table, hear what the problems are from the neighbors, go out into the neighborhoods, discern what the problems are, and then bring the resources together, not just me, but others, all sides of town, to come up with solutions together. That's my style of leadership, and that's why I'm running.
Thank you so much. Mr. Rennes Bowers. Next, we will hear, first of all, we're glad to see you join us, Mr. Jeffrey Mims, but we're going to
Thank
go
you.
to Gary Leitzell, who will give his 2-minute introduction. You're on.
All right, thank you. Hi, thank you everyone who's watching this. My name's Gary Leitzell. I am the former mayor of Dayton, Ohio from 2010 to 2014. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I lived there till I was 9, and then my parents separated. I ended up in England for the next 12 and a half years, where I got a degree in geology. I came back to America. I'm back. I came back to the United States in 1982 and worked several sales and management jobs. I even did some insurance sales. I worked for an auction company. And I came to Dayton in 1994. A friend of mine was moving to England. I came here to pay his rent so he wouldn't lose his mortgage. I ended up buying his house. And from that point on, I got involved in my neighborhood association. I was the president of my neighborhood association for 6 consecutive years. I was the chair of the Southeast Priority Board for 2 years before I became mayor. During my term as mayor, I got a lot of things done, things that you would take for granted in this day and age. And I've got a nice list here, which you can go to. If you go to gogarygo.com, that's my webpage, and up in the corner is a blog link. And back in 2013, I wrote this article about all these things that I'd gotten done. If you have a big blue bin, it was because I was the mayor. The rule of 17 in the Oregon district, where we couldn't have any more than 17 liquor licenses, I made that happen. My wife got the paid.daytonwater.com because she bugged me all the time. You can report crimes online. I mean, the list, there's 83 things on this list, and I pretty much personally touched about 60 something of them. So I'll leave it at that. I was called the people's mayor.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. As I indicated, thank you for joining us, Mr. Jeffrey Mims. You have 2 minutes of an introduction, and your time begins now.
Okay, and thank you very much. I have a very interesting and long story, but I'm not going to give you my whole 74 years. I was born in Clanton, Alabama, and my parents moved to Dayton, Ohio when I was 2 months old. I have more than 4 decades of strong, dedicated leadership to this community. I'm a Vietnam vet in 67, 68, Benoit Air Force Base, 604th Air Commando Squadron. Also, I was a teacher and a coach in the Dayton Public Schools. I've mentored young people for, again, at least 4, almost 5 decades in terms of adding value to this community. Additionally, I had my educational opportunities here as well, because Dayton has been great to me. My children both graduated from Dayton Public Schools, and they both have gone on to college and now make more money than me, which is a blessing and a tribute to the school system that we have here in Dayton. This school system also has worked well for me. My education is at Central State University, Wright State, and University of Dayton. I've also served in this district as Director of Government Relations and also a union president. For the last 7 years, I've been on the Dayton City Commission, and we have moved this city forward. Okay, stop and honor the timelines. Okay, that was a quick 2 minutes, but again, we had the fastest job growth in the nation prior to the pandemic and the challenges that we had at the Oregon district, the tornado, and also the visit from the Klan.
Thank you. Thank all 3 of you for your introduction. I'm sure our audience was pleased to hear your comments early on. I did not take the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Cheryl Spencer. I am a lifelong resident of the city of Dayton, also a product of Dayton Public Schools. I'm an entrepreneur here. I have enjoyed living in the city of Dayton, and it'll take very good honor and privilege to be able to be your moderator this evening. I hope that this goes well and our people will learn a lot about you and your platforms, and they'll be able to ask those burning questions that they're just talking to their neighbors on the phone about. With that said, audience, remember, you can submit questions via the chat. They will come to me. The questions can be directed in general, or they can be directed to one particular candidate. With that said, we'll start with our first question. This question is for Mr. Leitzell. The majority vote of 3 elected officials controls the direction of the city. If elected, can you work with the existing city commissioners? Which of your commissioner candidates would you encourage the voter to vote for in addition to you?
Okay, you're going out of the order that I had these printed up in. There's only one person left on that commission from my first term that I may have some difficulty working with. Everyone else is pretty much new. Chris Shaw was on my leadership council. I shouldn't have any problems there, but I am helping Jordan Wortham, and I'm helping Jordan Wortham because he's the only other truly independent candidate. And he and I have hooked up, and we're talking to people. He's got an energy that I think is great. There are also a couple of other candidates that are running that I would love to see on that commission, because I'm pretty sure I can work with them. The only ones I don't want are the ones that are actually endorsed by a political party. And I'll leave it at that. I mean, I can pretty much work with everyone, but I don't, endorsements are there to divide us, and I can't work with people I feel that have pressure put on them by a political organization.
Thank you. I will give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. Bowers.
Well, I didn't have the questions ahead of time, so anything you hear is just going to be just purely right off my heart. But that's good, because I'm not trying to construct some image of myself that doesn't exist. I think I can work with everybody, whoever is elected. I think I can work with. In the fire service, we never, we went to fires, we went to emergency scenes, we had to tear cars apart to get people out of cars, we had to save lives. We never even thought about what party affiliation or anything else. We were in a crisis mode, which we feel like the city is in, and it's time to come together and press ahead with solutions. So I am a uniter. I feel certain that I am an independent, but I can work with Democrats. I can work with Republicans. I can work with anybody who has a heart and a passion to see this city become the city that has the potential to become.
Yeah, you also have 1 minute to respond.
Okay, very quickly, I get off the top first. My choices of individuals that I hope are elected are Stacey Benson Taylor and Scott Sliver. Those individuals who are both members of the executive board for the NAACP have demonstrated a value to this community. My leadership style is just totally that of being collaborative. My presidency as the union president, school board president, and my time on the commission both involved training with consultants to build a team. And there's no way to function without a team. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leitzell, you have 30 seconds if there was something you would like to rebut or addition to your previous comments.
I just want to make a point that this is actually a non-partisan election, which means everybody can vote. You don't have to declare for a party at the polls. So I would encourage everyone to come out and vote for the person you think will make the biggest difference in the next 4 years.
Thank you. Thank you all for those questions. The next question, this is directed to Mr. Mims. The city of Dayton is set to receive $147 million of funding from the latest COVID-19 stimulus bill. Where should the money be used?
Okay, first of all, we have to see what the guidelines and regulations are going to be as associated with that money. The federal government does not give you money without some strings attached to it. There are multiple things that we have to be cognizant of as we look at those dollars, because those are one-time dollars. It is, I guess, maybe almost half of our budget, more than half of our budget for the year. When we look at the COVID issues that have happened and the losses of positions that we've had, we have to find ways of replacing some of those positions, and also find ways to make sure we have a certain amount of reserve because we're going to lose a lot of jobs and income tax because people are going to be working from home now. So we will not be getting the income tax dollars that we would normally be getting for those individuals working in the city. So as we look at those things, because again, these are one-time costs, we also have to look at priorities that we have not been able to address. Step up some issues relative to blighted homes if we can. Make sure that our employee base is solid and sound, because there's some critical positions that we've had to lay off that we really want to make whole again. So those are my answers as far as that's concerned. I look forward to those guidelines. It's easy to promise what you do, what you will do, and to make those kinds of things gloss in the air and shine and sparkle. But reality says we have to be very prudent with those dollars and make sure that we are not finding ourselves in a situation a year or two from now in dire straits or in worse situations than we're in right now.
Very much. Mr. Leitzell?
Federal money comes with strings attached. Mr. Mims is right there. Until it's determined what they say it can be used for, everything is pure speculation. I'd actually like to see it used to solve some of our blight and vacant structure issues and to encourage redevelopment and small business growth in our neighborhoods. But again, the feds dictate what we do with it.
Thank you. Mr. Bowers, your response?
Yes, I agree with both candidates. There's going to be lots of strings attached to it. So let's see how we can use the money. But I'm in agreement with the blighted neighborhoods, the abandoned houses have to be addressed. And I think we also need to grow our economy. We need to invest in small businesses. And this is a one-time opportunity. If we're allowed to do certain things, I would like to see us maximize, bring the business community together, bring the entrepreneurs together, draw upon their expertise and their know-how, and let's grow these dollars. Let's grow this $147 million. So that's not a one-time expenditure. It's like buying a new car. Once you drive it off the lot, it's depreciated. So we could drive this car off the lot and have tremendous depreciation, or we could invest in appreciation. I think we ought to use these 147 in as much appreciating ways as we possibly can.
Thank you. Rebuttal, 30 seconds, Mr. Mims, or any additional comment?
Just additional comments. Actually, we're all pretty much on the same page with regards to that. And the suggestion that we bring in business leaders and community leaders is something that we've been doing since I've been there for the last 8 years, which is why the city is growing the way it is and why we have more people moving into Dayton.
Thank you. Our next question, this is directed to Mr. Bowers. The mayor works closely with 5 appointed individuals: the city manager, the director of the commission office, the city clerk, the civil service examiner, and the executive director of the Human Relations Council. How have these individuals in these positions benefited West Dayton? If they have not aided West Dayton, what are your plans to ensure these officers benefit the West Dayton community?
Well, on the fire service, we certainly worked with the city manager, and we also worked with civil service at various times. All of our promotional tests were civil service tests and things like that. I do not think civil service has been the friend of West Dayton. Number one objective in my 30-year career on the Dayton Fire Department was to hire minorities, and it failed abysmally. The firefighters that we have on the Dayton firefighters, we don't even see color. These are my brothers. My life is in their hands. Their lives are in my hands. It's a wonderful thing, but we don't have as many minorities as we want. And part of the problem with that is the city is kind of talked out of both sides of their mouth. They say that they really want to hire minority firefighters, minority police officers. But the facts are that those same minority people are being pursued by other suburban departments that pay a lot more money and have a lot less hazard associated with the job. So, to say you want to hire minorities and things like that and not being willing to pay them and be competitive with the suburban departments, it's just talk. It's not action. I am so tired of talk. I want to see action. I want to see us move the ball forward. So one of my biggest things is you're not going to attract business and entrepreneurs if your city is not safe. So public safety, which I am an expert at, 30-year career, It's absolute must. We must have public safety. We must invest in police. We must invest in firefighting, and then we will have minority candidates once we're competitive with the suburban departments. We get so many candidates. 2 years later, they're working for Kettering. They make more money, less hazard. That's just the facts.
Thank you. Mr. Mims, your response?
Well, actually, we have not had the high number of minority candidates and women candidates that we would like to have. We've done a variety of things in terms of working. And most recently, I believe a year and a half ago, we have a HEROES program where we have allowed individuals who are working within the city who are qualified for those programs and to go to our recruiting classes to be eligible to work as a police officer. Additionally, while we have not had those problems with fire, we have set up 2 programs. One, I did a program over at one of the elementary schools, 7th and 8th graders, where we introduced young people along with police to work in that area to increase their knowledge about police. And 2, we have a recruit program and training program at Belmont High School that's in this 2nd year, I believe, 2nd or 3rd year, where police and fire recruit. Additionally, part of the issue on the charter amendment is to look at ways that we can have a rule of 3 or maybe a rule of 10 as opposed to the rule of 1, so that all those scores are counted equal, at least up to the top 10.
Thank you. Mr. Leitzell?
I'm actually going to answer the question the way you asked it. It's the job of these individuals to focus on all of Dayton, north, south, east, and west. It would seem that for the last several years, the focus has been on downtown because all neighborhoods are saying the same thing. It's also the job of the mayor and the commissioners to be out in the community. One of the things I did was I would show up unannounced at neighborhood association meetings and priority board meetings to get a better feel for what was happening in the neighborhoods. I don't know anyone on this current commission that does that. And I learned that trick from former Commissioner Dick Zimmer. And I'm absolutely surprised none of the other commissioners learned the same trick. I mean, if you want to know what's happening, if you want your pulse to be on the arm of the community, you need to go out and you need to show up and you need to listen.
Thank you. Mr. Bowers, a rebuttal or additional comments?
Well, I agree with both other candidates. I'm a uniter. I work with people. I'll be able to work with whomever as long as they're committed to the same overall agenda that I have, which is to move the city forward. And so I don't think banding is going to work. The police only get 250 recruits. They exhaust their entire list when they're hiring. So banding wouldn't even affect police officers. You got to increase the pay if you're going to recruit minority firefighters.
Thank you. Our next question. We're going back to you, Mr. Leitzell. A large population of renters living in houses that lack necessities, water, heat, working applications, etc. How will your administration ensure property owners provide residents with livable conditions?
Okay, I've got a very quick answer here. People are not permitted to live where there's no running water. It's a sanitation issue. One of the things we could do is require landlords to hand out a notice regarding renters' rights as part of a contract. That's where they can place rents in escrow account and the landlord cannot receive the money until the issues are fixed. I don't know if as a city or as a county, whether we give that information out, but renters do have a lot of rights. And I know this because I have a rental unit and I've been in a situation where the renter abused my property and it's cost me a lot of money to fix it. But I can see both sides of an argument here, but that's probably the simplest solution, is to let the renters know what their rights are so they can force the landlords to do the renovations.
Thank you. Mr. Bowers?
I don't have the questions in front of me. Would you repeat the question, please?
No problem. A large population of renters living in houses that lack necessities such as water, heat, working appliances. How will your administration ensure property owners provide residents with livable conditions?
Well, I agree with Mr. Leitzell. I mean, you in a property without water. So I think enforce the codes. It's a symbiotic relationship, tenants and owners. I've had rental properties. I've had tremendous renters. I've had disastrous renters. I was a soft touch. I allowed people to live in my property. I didn't want to evict people. They got into me for thousands of dollars, and eventually I had to evict or lose the place. So it's very hard. And the more compassionate you are, the harder it is to be a landowner. But I think that we need to get to the point where people see that people need a place that's safe for their children to be raised, and the landlords need to step up and provide that place. And then the responsibility of the tenant is to live up to the agreement that's been signed, pay their rent on time. And so it's a symbiotic relationship. Both have responsibilities to one another. Pardon?
Mr. Mims, your response.
Okay, the rules and regulations and knowing your rights on both sides is important, as was mentioned before. And then to make sure that the city enforces those codes. I have rental property as well. And sometimes I'm a non-traditional landlord in the sense of reducing the rent for individuals because of the COVID situation that we had, and also going half when they want to make some improvements that they see inside of the house. So I think the aspect of making sure, again, clarifying what those rules and what those regulations are, and then trying to do everything you can as a renter, and also to work with the city and those inspectors who are enforcing those guidelines and those rules.
Thank you. Any additional comments, Mr. Leitzell?
No, I just think, I just think that landlords have to be able to at least, or that's something that we could write into the city ordinances, that they are required to give a notice of what renters' rights are and how they can put money in escrow to force the landlord to do the improvements.
Thank you all, especially in your expertise as being landlords. I hope that we will never see any of your names on those landlords who are not allowing their tenants' rights to be exercised. Next question.
Good one. True.
Mr. Mims, illegal trash dumping continues to be a problem for many of our neighborhoods. The city of Dayton does not own and operate a dump facility. The county dumping site is located in Moraine. What are plans to create more access points for residents to dump waste?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank all the numerous organizations and neighborhood groups who have been out picking up trash over the last, probably like the last 3 years. It's gotten to be very fashionable. I think the tornado caused us to have to do a lot of work in that category as well. The aspect of trying to get more and more people to stop throwing trash down is a key component. And that's a total attitudinal change that we have to make sure that people do as best they can. When they have more and more pride in their communities and in the city, they tend to throw out less trash. The aspect of trying to find ways to increase our dumping sites is a continuous issue. It's a continuous problem. And again, those numbers of individuals who continue to do that, we put some cameras up in different places to try to catch individuals, to find those individuals who are doing those types of things, because they all work against what is happening with the positive movement that we have as far as Dayton is concerned.
Mr. Bowers.
Well, I agree that litter and trash is one of our biggest problems. In 1968, Lady Bird Johnson presented Mayor James H. McGee with the Cleanest City in America Award, 1968. We're not that anymore, but litter is a pandemic problem, but it's something that can be easily solved. And I think it does get to the heart of a neighborhood, taking pride in your environment, having facilities like Mr. Mims said. The faith community has stepped up. One Saturday from 9 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we collected 22 tons of litter in a neighborhood, bagged it up, put it on street corners, and then in cooperation with the city came around with garbage trucks and picked it all up. And like Mr. Mims said, it's become fashionable. This is happening all over the city. I think we should encourage that, and we can have the cleanest city in America again. So I agree with Mr. Mims on that.
Thank you. Mr. Leitzell?
A very simple solution would be to put some dumpsters in 4 or 5 locations around the city where trash is bad, and I guess encourage the community to come out and clean up and put the stuff in the dumpster. They could also put 1 or 2 out for tires. That would help. But you ought to train cameras on these dumpsters so that you can catch the ones that are dumping illegally. And trust me, if they have license plates that aren't assigned to the city, I would say we need to fine them double. And if they are licensed contractors dumping building materials, they should lose their license as far as I'm concerned. And we got to get tough on these people. And let's face it, Oakwood wouldn't tolerate it, so why should we?
Thank you. Mr. Mims, a rebuttal or
Well, I
additional?
want to, yes, just give a shout out to one of my mentees, Chaz Amos, the I Love West Dayton group, who's doing these cleanups on a continuous basis. Caleb and Jacob, I believe, to the ministers who have also been out on a continuous basis, making sure that we keep the city as clean as possible.
Thank you. Next question. This is to you, Mr. Bowers. West Dayton lacks healthcare options. How do you plan to persuade healthcare providers to relocate to our area?
Well, that's a very good question, and I haven't thought a lot about it. I think what you have to do, when I was in the fire department, I was in charge of a 8-county effort to prepare for a terrorist attack. Radiological, explosive, chemical, biological, whatever the attack was, we had to come together with solutions, how we would respond, and then the feds were going to give us money, then we had to buy the resources and distribute them. The way I approached that was totally overwhelming question. That was a totally overwhelming responsibility. I got people together in areas of expertise, hospital administrations, doctors, nurses, police, FBI, fire, all the entities that would respond to a terrorist attack. I brought them together to the table. We put the problem out. Each worked in their area of expertise to come up with solutions. When it comes to health care, that's a very complicated issue. And everybody ought to have affordable health care that's accessible. All right, so let's bring the people together. Let's find out what the issues are. I actually don't know what the issues are, but there are people out there who work in these fields that will know what the issues are. Let's bring them to the table with the goal of providing affordable health care, making it acceptable to all the citizens of Dayton, no matter where they live. So my answer is, you don't have to be the be-all, end-all to be mayor. You have to be a person who's willing to bring people together, to find solutions together, and then implement those solutions.
Thank you. Mr. Leitzell?
Let me just say this. Good Sam should never have come down, in my opinion. I would have looked back to see if there was any tax money that went into building it. And if it had, I would have used that as a bargaining chip to keep the building. I don't believe anyone on that commission would have thought of that. Anyway, maybe a solution would be to incentivize family practice doctors to partner with more specialized doctors to have regular office days and facilities in our neighborhoods. If little clinics can be opened up in Kroger, we could certainly use a shipping container store concept to open them up in the community where they are lacking. And I'm going to mention shipping container stores and homes several times tonight. So when you stop watching this, I'm going to ask you, Google shipping container stores and shipping container houses and look at the images and realize that I actually was preaching this stuff back in 2010. We can do things affordably using, I guess it would be a third world concept, but some of the stuff you can do with these things is amazing.
Thank you. Mr. Mims, your comments.
Yes, healthcare is a vital component of life, clearly. And I think healthier lifestyles. And those things have to be continuously emphasized. We need to have free and better healthcare for every citizen that we have in these United States. We also look at the fact that while in the absence of Good Sam, what we have done, we've encouraged other health institutions like Five River Metro to locate at Roosevelt Elementary School to help provide those kind of services, not just for the students there and their families, but also for members of the community. We've had some 6 different small urgent care type facilities that have emerged throughout the city of Dayton. And we've had a step up, if you will, and also Premier and in Kettering Medical Center to take care of some of the problems that we've had as a result of the loss of Good Samaritan Hospital. So that movement is still continuing, but I will still say clearly, the absence.
Thank you.
I'll stop right there.
Additional comments, Mr. Bowers.
Well, I'm a conservative, which means I don't think government is the answer to every human problem. I believe that the faith community is a key component of medical care. The faith community used to educate, they used to do all medicine, et cetera, but the government took over more and more things, and the faith community decreased in their importance in the community. So I'm a big believer in the faith community, getting people to doctors, transportation, et cetera.
Question is to Mr. Leitzell. Over the past 5 years, we have experienced economic development with the Dayton Metro Libraries, the Dayton Arcade, and several other projects throughout the city of Dayton. However, we do not see many Blacks or women laborers working on these projects. What are your plans to connect our residents to work on these projects?
Who's that directed at?
You, Mr. Leitzell.
Okay, give me a second here. I told you I came prepared, and my answers don't take 2 minutes. Here we go. Okay. I want to tell you this. Tim Reardon and I met with Derek Ford and Chris Shaw with the NAACP to discuss this very issue in 2011 and 2012. The issue at the time was that Black businesses were not registered with the city, so they weren't included in notifications that the city mails out for bids. So we asked them to go out and get more people registered, which obviously they didn't, because it's still an issue. What I advised Black businesses to do if they didn't meet the financial demands needed to be registered with the city was to see who was getting the bids and then go and subcontract through them. This was the reason why in 2010, I got the commission agendas made public online. It actually caused competition and cost for services decreased. So the tool is there. I guess the trick is educating the business community that they need to be registered with the city to get the bids. And if they can't get registered, they need to know who's getting the bids so they can be subcontractors.
Thank you, Mr. Mims.
Yeah, this is a multitude of problems associated with this. This community and its educational system, not only here, but across the nation, and primarily in urban schools, stopped teaching machine shop and the types of work that creates a large pool of workers to take these jobs. We have begun to work more and more with the school system and also having some of the training programs for young people, not just at opponents, but also this last year, they opened some programs over at Meadowdale High School to introduce more and more young people to the world of work and the vocational skills. Additionally, we have put more pressure on our department heads and not just on our HRC director, Erica Fields, to make sure that those department heads do a better job of hiring local and minority workers to get these jobs. So we provide that kind of support for them. And those numbers in terms of local and minority workers have increased over the last 4 years. They're not where we want them to be, but they have increased.
Thank you. Mr. Bowers, your comments.
I agree with Mr. Mims that training programs are essential in this. We talked with some employers and they're telling us that they have so many jobs that are unfilled because they're not trained workers. And these are good paying jobs, equivalent of somebody who would graduate from college. I think there's been this emphasis that if you're going to succeed in life, you have to have a college degree. And that's certainly not the case today. The trades, the people in the trades, they're in need. There's a great need for them. And I think training programs need to multiply so that every job could be fulfilled by a qualified person, regardless of skin color. So I don't think we should discriminate in any way, not hiring white people, not hiring Black people. Get a person who's trained and give.
Thank you. Lasting comments to rebuttal, Mr. Leitzell?
Well, I think we need to change the way we educate. We've focused way too much on tests for the last probably 20 years, and we've gone away from producing productive members of society. I was an advocate for vocational schools. Yes, we need to teach people to be carpenters, plumbers, electricians, concrete layers, bricklayers, stonemasons. We need to focus on that as well as mechanical things and building.
Thank you. It was so nice to hear that you all were in agreement on the response to that question. Give yourselves a round of applause. I like it. Next question. This question is for you, Mr. Bowers. What will you do to improve race relations and eradicate institutionalized racism in the city?
Well, I'm a big believer that the faith community is the key to solving the race issue, or at least moving towards a solution. We have had one program after another, and programs don't work. Racism is in the heart of man. The human race is fallen, and racism is sin, and it's a terrible curse upon our society. But I do believe that the faith community is the answer. As the faith community, as the Black pastors and the white pastors, as the Black congregations and the white congregations come together, as people see the love that they have for one another, Jesus said all men would know that he came into this world by the love that they have for one another. And Sunday is the most segregated day of the week. White churches gathering with whites, Black churches gathering with Blacks. Part of that's culture and understandable. But I would like to see a concerted effort made by our faith leaders to gather together and to address systemic racism, institutional racism, wherever it exists. But I do believe it's a problem in the heart of man, and another program isn't going to get to the right solution. I do believe that as pastors and congregations come together, we can move towards that goal through the Lord Jesus.
Thank you. Mr. Leitzell, your comment.
Okay, I think we need to get back on track to being a city of neighbors like we used to be. We've lost the sense of community fostered by neighborhood festivities. I always envisioned Dayton as a place where equal rights and fairness should be goals that we strive for. And as people, we need to come together and quit stereotyping.
Oh, quick response. Okay. Mr. Mims, your comments.
Okay, wishing it away is not going to make it happen. I volunteered as a, I guess, 19-year-old to go to Vietnam so that when I came back from Vietnam, I would be treated fairly because of the racism that I experienced in school and in society. Now, I'm still waiting for that to happen. Of course, it has not happened that way. I am part of several racial equity groups. They're designed to look at all the issues that we're looking at from a historical perspective to find out what is the root cause of racism and how we can make it better. One of the groups I'm involved in is reading, required reading, a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And not only are we reading that book, but we're discussing that book. We're sharing our life stories about things that have happened that have affected us based upon race, and coming together to try to figure out the best way of addressing this situation so that we can stop losing the gross national product that we have in these United States because of racism is a key issue.
Your rebuttal, Mr. Bowers?
Well, no rebuttal, but just an additional thought that in the 2 years I've been retired from the fire department, I've been spending my time building relationships with Black pastors, having them in my home, being in their home, just building bridges. And I didn't do that because I was going to run for mayor. I didn't even know I was going to run for mayor until February 10th of this year, but because it was the right thing to do. And I just think there's, as long as we put an emphasis on differences, white, Black, all that, we're not going to find solutions.
Thank you all for your comments. Just want to remind our audience once again that you can submit your comments via the chat. It can be general questions, or your questions can be specified to a particular candidate. We have a lot of questions, so I hear, in our chat room. So let me continue on. This question is for Mr. Mims. The mistreatment of Black residents by police officers has led the city of Dayton to undertake its most extensive police reform process. Now that that process has concluded, will West Dayton residents see a decrease in force case involving white police officers and unarmed Black residents? If elected mayor, how will you change the toxic culture between Dayton police and the Black resident?
Okay, thank you for that question. Now, first of all, this is a toxic situation across the nation. And there are a lot of ideas that are in conflict with logic when it comes to the way certain things have happened relative to police in neighborhoods. When we watch what happened at the Capitol on January the 6th, we see that there were police officers who did not shoot individuals when they were clearly in danger, clearly a threat. And so the aspect of sometimes them saying, well, I shot this person because I was fearful of my life is not a valid excuse. The police reform work that we're working on, and I've been co-chair with Willis Blackshear Jr. of the Use of Force Committee, has given us collectively some 150 recommendations. And I think the subgroups, the community groups that we're going to be working with, more than 100 individuals who are part of those recommendations that we have. It can't do anything but make situations for us better. So there are a lot of restructuring things that we're doing. We're continuing, it's not ending. We're continuing to work with members of the community on those respective committees. Each committee is reflected in the larger group that we're working with to make sure we create the best condition we can for trust between the police and the residents that we have in the city of Dayton. That is essential, and it's our #1 priority with regards to that.
Thank you. Mr. Bowers, your response to that question?
You know, back when I came on the fire department in 1989, you took a written test and then you did the physical agility test, and then there was a personal interview. And somewhere along the line, the personal interview fell off. I think that's a huge mistake for civil service, because it was in the personal interview that the bad apples were weeded out. Just because somebody scores high on a test and can do the physical agility doesn't mean they have the character and the wherewithal, the people skills to perform as a police officer or as a firefighter. It requires incredible people skills. And so we lost the interview process. So I think that definitely needs to be reinstituted. The police reform, I met with the Fraternal Order of Police here in Dayton. They told me that the FOP is not represented on the police reform committee. Mr. Mims contests that, but they actually handpicked a black officer and a black female officer and a male officer, but they're not representing the FOP. So if you want to get to the heart of the problem, you have to have the right people at the table. And that's
Mr. Leitzell, your response.
Okay, I think this is just my opinion. I think we need to go back to true neighborhood policing practices where officers know who the residents are on their beat. They need to interact with our youth more, maybe sponsor some sports events where officers and students shoot hoops or swing baseball bats together. Our officers or even FOP members could do some mentoring. It wouldn't hurt to have the fire department involved in things like this either. The power of suggestion is amazing. Simply suggesting this to the FOP and the firefighters union could actually get them to make it their idea and get results. So one of my biggest strengths was using the power of suggestion to get results. And I think if we make certain suggestions to certain people, we could get back to the youth realizing that police officers are just humans, and the police reinvesting in the neighborhood youth and breaking down these stereotypes and ideas that shouldn't exist.
Thank you. Mr. Mims, rebuttal.
Okay, yes, we have many of our police officers who do just that. They do work and interact with young people in their communities in terms of playing different sports, etc. Again, I push back on Mr. Bowers. We had this conversation before. We have had members of all levels of the police who are involved in this long training process. And we looked at best practices across the nation, and those are some of the kind of recommendations that we made. And one of the other key components that we talked about, he mentioned one of them, I should say two. One of them was the selection process, the psychological, and also the training.
This question is to Mr. Leitzell. Issue 9 promised improvements to our streets. However, potholes continue to be a significant problem in many West Dayton neighborhoods. What are your plans to improve the roads? Okay,
let me find that one. It's good that my answers are short because they'll never take 2 minutes. Okay, I've got here Public Works goes around every year assigning a grade to Dayton streets and thoroughfares. Then they get put on a waiting list until they have the funding to repair it. They're also upgrading the water and sewer system, so they're trying to coordinate that so the new road surfaces are put down after the roads have been dug up by the water lines crews. You wouldn't want to do the opposite. Anyway, the Dayton Delivers app was developed in 2013 when I was mayor to report things like this, so that you can get these things patched. If you take a photograph and put it on Dayton Delivers, you're making Public Works aware of the problem so that they can fix it. but I do know that sometimes you may have to make them aware of it 7 or 8 times.
Thank you. Mr. Mims, your response.
Yeah, we passed issue 9, which is to fix all the roads in Dayton over the next 8 years. We are in that process that started in 2017. I apologize, going back a bit. And what we have found is that those roads that are in bad repair right now, they're still on the list to be repaired. We have certain situations where we have potholes that develop, and we've purchased additional equipment now that allows us to patch a wider area to fix those. We all know that things that cause those roads to fall into a state of disrepair are basically common sense and science. A rock gets into a crack, the crack gets wider because of cold weather, and then rain, and then heat, and they continue to expand, and the rocks continue to separate the roads more and more as you go through those roads. So again, getting the money to do that was critical. In the time that we passed that tax increase was the first tax increase that the city had in 34 years.
Mr. Bowers, your response.
Yeah, I was over on Smithville Road, and the citizens over there are telling me the same thing. There's potholes big enough that a small car could disappear in, and it's very costly. People have been telling me about broken axles, bent rims on cars. So it's very frustrating when you hit one of these, you blow your tire, and then you're left stranded. So it's a problem not only on the west side but on the east side as well. I think part of it. I think there's been an overemphasis on expenditures in the downtown area. I appreciate the good that's taken place downtown. The downtown has somewhat of a renaissance, but the neighborhoods feel neglected, and the roads are certainly high on the citizens' list of things that need to take place. The city just spent, I believe, $900,000 on the arts, and I'm all for the arts. I was chaplain of the Dayton Dragons baseball team for 19 seasons. But the citizens are not that concerned about the arts. They're concerned about the potholes.
Mr. Bowers, we got all additional comments, Mr. Leitzell.
No, I just want to reiterate that we developed the Dayton Delivers app so that people could report things like this to the city so that they are made aware of the situation so that they actually can repair it. If they're not aware of it, they can't do the fixing. So the citizens need to step up and do that. It's just a very simple app you put on your phone, take a picture, fill out a thing, send it in, and check back in a week and see if anything's been done.
Thank you very much. I just hope everyone has a phone that they can download that app on. Moving right along. This question is for Mr. Bowers. If elected, what steps would you take to put our city on a firmer financial footing?
Well, we need to grow the economy, and the way to grow the economy is to attract business and entrepreneurs for investment. But you're not going to attract business and entrepreneurs if they consider Dayton a risk, a safety risk. So the problems and the solutions are all interrelated. You can't have business and entrepreneurs without safety. And so you have to grow your tax base, but you have to have a safe city. As we continually try to cut police and fire, I think it's a huge mistake. Petty crime increases. We have 11 police officers on duty from 3 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock in the morning for a city the size of Dayton. It's absolutely inexcusable. It's a cost-saving measure. We are browning out fire stations. We have stations strategically placed in the city to save life and property, because when you got a medic unit coming, you're in a heart attack or you're having a stroke, you need intervention immediately. And as you brown out fire stations to save money, you put the citizens at risk. So citizens that we're talking to, 3,000 doors since February 10th, they're telling us public safety. Okay, you get safe streets, you will attract business. There is money to be made in this city. I'd like to see Dayton become the small business capital of Ohio. I think it's primed to do that. We sit at the intersection of Interstate 70 and Interstate 75. We have a tremendous water system. We have, water is a tremendous resource. in the city of Dayton, it's tremendously underutilized, but business needs water. So let's maximize our strengths. Let's get the business leaders together. There are more retired CEOs in Dayton area than any other part of the country. Let's get these successful businessmen together, put the problem out to them, ask them how we make Dayton a more attractive business for investment. They'll have answers.
Mr. Leitzell, your response, please.
Yeah, during my first term between 2010 and 2014, we maintained a budget surplus for 3 years in a row, so we could deal with the unexpected better. I think we need to do the same again. We also need to eliminate wasteful spending in the departments, and we need to stop fighting unnecessary lawsuits.
Thank you. Mr. Mims, your response?
Yeah, we continuously have a A+ bond rating, which is amazing based upon the kind of challenges that we've had over the last several years. And it's also amazing the fact that we've had that bond rating, which has been higher than some of the other cities, even some of the suburban cities that we have here in Ohio. That's due in a great part because of the collaborative working relationship that we have with our staff, with the labor unions as we work through these different called labor contracts. All these things are very critical as we go through this process. The other thing that's critical that we're doing is that we're attracting more and more business, which is almost like it's an amazing feat to do those kinds of things, which are causing, again, as I mentioned before, more and more people to move into the city of Dayton, more and more businesses, more and more investments that we have in West Dayton and East Dayton and South Dayton and North Dayton.
Mr. Bowers, rebuttal or additional comments?
Well, as we've been talking to the citizens, they're pointing out the drug houses in the neighborhood. They're pointing out the abandoned houses. The abandoned houses, as we've talked about before, are a huge problem. So they told us even that they stopped calling the police because of the long response times. That's unacceptable. We have to invest in public safety to attract business, to build our tax base, to keep the city on a financial sound footing. That's simple.
Thank you. We have about 10 minutes left before we allow our audience to ask their questions. So let's get to this really, really good question here. What is more important? This question is for Mr. Mims. What is more important, acting in response to the will of the people or acting in the way city officials believe is the best course of action?
It's a combination of both of those. When you look at the issues, we're primarily elected by individuals who sense that we have their same set of values. Those individuals who have known us, those individuals who do research and they see where we are, where we've been, they develop a trust level, they develop an attachment, as I have by being a longtime teacher and a coach and a mentor of young people in this community. So when you're talking to individuals, and my group has walked 4,000 houses in terms of getting answers from them about what they see as important as far as the city of Dayton is concerned and how they want some of those things addressed. Dayton, with all of its warts, is still a very great place. And as we move to improve the quality of life for all the citizens of Dayton, we have to make sure we continue to make sure that we listen and everybody knows that we're listening to them and we let them know what we need from them to make those things happen that they want to be able to raise their families and have a higher quality of life as far as the city of Dayton is concerned.
Thank you. Time to spare, Mr. Mims. We'll go right on to Mr. Bowers. Your response?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. You asked me and I went past it.
Or Mr. Mims, if you could repeat it.
I can tell you what it was. What is more important, acting in response to the will of the people or acting in the way city officials believe is the best course of action?
Well, thank you, my assistant moderator. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.
I told you I was prepared.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.
I believe it's communication, isn't it? It's both, but the citizens feel like they have been ignored. So we hear this over and over and over again. So I do think it's a collaborative effort. City government needs to be very responsive to the needs of the neighborhoods, the needs of the citizens. The citizens do not presently believe that the current administration has been. They believe they've been ignored. And so that's the thing, that they're looking for change. And I believe I am the change agent. I've never held office, but I am a uniter and I'm a listener. And so aren't we representing the people of this city? It's not that I'm representing myself, I'm representing the city, whole city. Communication between both is essential, but the neighbors are
Thank you. Mr. Mims, rebuttal?
Okay,
Hey, do I get to say something?
Yeah, I think you have Mr.
Oh, I
Leitzell.
didn't allow you to say anything.
No, you haven't.
Oh, that's
I'm real quick,
because
though.
you right, that's because you became my assistant moderator. I apologize. Go right ahead, Mr. Leitzell.
Okay, the will of the people should be able to lead city officials towards the best course of action, but those officials must be willing to listen to the people in the first place. When I was mayor, I would talk to citizens. I mean, I told you, I was out in the community. They would give me ideas. I met with the city manager every Friday morning for an hour and a half, and I shared those ideas with him. He shared those ideas with staff. Staff came up with solutions, and the city moved forward. It didn't take a vote of the commission. It was just being out in the community and talking to the right person at the top of City Hall and getting him to get staff to do something.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Mims, your rebuttal. Or
Okay.
additional comments.
Collaboration and leadership and communication are all critical elements in terms of this whole process. There are times when you have individuals who want X when X is not possible until you do Y. So you have to explain to them that what you need from them to move one step, then together you can move to the next step. So it's a continuation of trust in the individuals that you've elected and trust and communication in the individuals who have caused you to be in the positions that you're in.
Thank you. Our last question before we go to our audience. This is to you, Mr. Leitzell. Do you think that West Dayton neighborhoods are healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that?
Okay, well, if they were thriving, you wouldn't be asking the question, would you?
Yeah, good point. Good point.
So two things: establish neighborhood associations or block clubs where none exist. To do this, we can utilize the NLI alumni. Neighborhoods, that's the Neighborhood Leadership Institute people. They are all excited when they come out from that program and want to do stuff. Anyway, I've noticed that neighborhoods with active members fare better than those that don't. So the other thing is to give people who want to restore and update these houses for resale the ability to pull their own permits. That single simple solution will make the rehab profitable and more people will start fixing up housing stock. Plus, it'll get brought up to current code, and it shouldn't matter who does the work as long as it passes the inspection. So that's how we do it.
Mr. Mims, your response.
Clearly, the issue in terms of where we are, not just in West Dayton, but across the city, any place where you have a set of citizens who have been neglected and experienced the foreclosure rates that we have, job losses that we have, and the underfunding of education that causes our citizens to be undereducated and or underemployed or unemployed. Those are all contributing factors in terms of where we are at this point in time. There is no simple solution to any of that. However, even in the face of those challenges that we have, we continue to have growth in regards to different neighborhoods in terms of Miami Chapel, the ongoing engagement we have with the residents, the situation with the choice neighborhoods that we're working with there. Madden Hills work there, Pineview Hills. We're doing things down. We have a San Marcos project going on down in the Wright Dunbar area. I mean, just a multitude of activities that we have in the city of Dayton in all parts of the city because of this teamwork that we're doing.
Mr. Bowers.
Well, I was stationed at Company 13 and Company 16 in my fire department career, and those are both West Side companies. I was stationed at Company 2, Company 15 on the east side of town. So I've been in more homes than all the politicians on the ballot over a 30-year career. So having been in those homes, I can tell you that the problems of the poor in West Dayton are not appreciably different than the problems of the poor in East Dayton. Poverty is just absolutely wrecked portions of our city. I will say this, that there are more churches in West Dayton, many more churches in West Dayton than there are in East Dayton. I do believe that the faith community can be a big help in bringing the standard of living and just renovating and reviving the West Side. East Dayton is going to be a larger problem. The heroin and fentanyl is in East Dayton.
Additional comments?
No, I think I basically summed it up. If you can allow people who want to fix up properties the ability to pull the permits, it'll make the job more profitable for them, and people will step up to the plate and start fixing up the housing stock and the building stock. And also, we need to increase our number of neighborhood associations in the city so that we can help the neighborhoods do better.
Thank you. We want to thank the West Side Democratic Club for these pre-submitted questions that our candidates have done well with in their responses. Their chat room is filled with questions. That's why I had to put my glasses on to be able to read all of these questions. And we don't have as much time as we did with the initial questions. So I really want to give our candidates an opportunity to kind of dive into these questions, since the audience are the ones that are submitted. But before I state that, I just want you to tune in to next Thursday. We have the primary debate for the city commission candidates, and that ought to be just as interesting as this one. Okay, the first question, this is to Mr. Leitzell. What does police reform look like to you as mayor?
Well, I think I just described it in the question you asked earlier, is that I think we need to seriously, and it's just my opinion, go back to looking at community policing practices where the officers park in the neighborhood, get out of the car, either ride around on a bicycle or walk around, talk to neighbors, shoot hoops with the kids, become more social and more, so people trust them more. I mean, I'm not a police officer. I know a few. Jordan Wortham was one, and he'd be good on the commission because he'd be able to deal with situations like that because he's been in the thick of it. So that would pretty much be my answer. Elect the people that you think can make the reform happen.
Mr. Mims, same question.
Okay, again, I'll just say to you again that the work that we're doing with the whole set of police reform issues is really beneficial for us. Looking at ways that we have identified a set of recommendations that causes policemen to wear body cameras, which is going to help improve the trust between them and the citizens. Also, a citizens' rights committee to make sure we go throughout this community and make sure that both the citizen and the police are fully aware of the rights of the citizens in terms of what they can and cannot be asked to do when a police is coming upon them. Also identifying different ways in terms of how the use of force could be identified. Additional training. Training is so critical in the selection process. Sometimes there's training that's only done maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years. There needs to be an uptick in terms of training. And one of the key components is training a police officer on how to de-escalate.
Mr. Bowers, same question.
Yeah, being a police officer is a tremendously complicated job. You have to have tremendous people skills. And when we did away with the interview process at civil service, it was a great disservice to both citizen and the police department. The police department tells me we want the interview process because it can get rid of the bad apples. If you got a guy that tests well, but he's got all kinds of interpersonal issues, it's going to come out in crisis situations. You have to have the interview process to weed out the bad apples. The FOP desires that. So I think neighborhood policing, as Gary said, I'm a total believer of that. I think we ought to bring the horses back for downtown. Everybody loved that. We need to invest in public safety. I've said it over and over again. You get what you pay for. And we've cut corners on the interview process. It's cost us. I do not believe the police problems in Dayton are any.
Additional comments, Mr. Leitzell, before I move on?
No, not really.
Thank you. This question is to Mr. Mims. How will the incumbent mayor address the corruption that the previous administration was plagued with and do things differently?
Yeah, we already have addressed it. Thank you for that question. It's giving me a good chance to clarify that. The situation has been addressed while some of the things that were in play were rules and or guidelines that date back to 4 mayors. And so some of those things create some loopholes that we have closed. And individuals who are involved in some of those processes or all those processes are no longer employees with the city of Dayton.
Thank you. Mr. Bowers, same question.
Integrity. We have to have city officials that have integrity. And so we need a climate of integrity. We need a climate of transparency. Right now, I can't honestly say that it doesn't exist, but I know the problems that have resulted in felony convictions and things like that. There has been a problem. So transparency, I think, is absolutely essential. When I'm mayor, it's going to be an open door policy. What you see is what you get. No question would be turned away. We want transparency. We want anybody to look at the city commission and at the mayor and the city manager and all the staff, through a microscope. We want that type of administration. So I think it boils down to getting the right people in these positions. So integrity is absolutely key.
Thank you. Mr. Leitzell, same question.
When you have one party control of an entire commission, there's absolutely no accountability. They can pretty much do anything they want, and no one, even at City Hall, will challenge them for fear of losing their job. That alone, in my mind, is corruption. We didn't have that when I was mayor. I had an open door. I had a very good relationship with the city manager. We discussed things, and nobody was brought up on any corruption charges. I think we did have somebody stealing money from the law department, and we only ever fired one person in the 4 years I was mayor. Nobody else left. All the directors stayed, and they're jumping ship. Chief Beal just bailed today. He's resigning or retiring. But I think it's got to do with, he's got a lot of lawsuits coming against him. So there's stuff that's happened that we don't know about yet, I'm sure.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Mr. Mims, or additional comments, please?
Well, there's a culture across this nation of individuals, primarily another party that's doing things they shouldn't be doing. We have a $60 million problem with the former Speaker of the House in Columbus, who still has his job. And unlike those individuals, we have chosen to facilitate the removal of those individuals who had infractions as far as the city of Dayton is concerned.
Thank you. Mr. Bowers, this question is to you. How will your administration strengthen youth and adult recreational areas, as well as adding with quality access time to those areas? Let me repeat that. How will your administration strengthen youth and adult recreational areas, as well as adding quality access to those areas, access in terms of times?
Well, I'm a big believer. I think, for financial reasons, we close parks, we close recreational facilities, we close pools. To me, that's unacceptable. It diminishes the quality of life in neighborhoods. So I believe that we need to reinvest in our parks, in our golf courses, in our pools, in our recreational facilities. I think that's key. Many years ago, I worked for the Montgomery County Community Action Agency as a community organizer, and our job was the whole youth component. We were stationed at Kaiser High School when Kaiser was a high school to de-escalate black and white gang tension there. We got into very sticky situation at Stewart Patterson Park, and but you develop skills along the way to de-escalate those things. But there were programs that we were able to do, youth programs, sports programs. There are many people that are willing to coach and be mentors to young people, but we have to invest in the facilities so they have a place to mentor and to invest in those young people. Churches are doing what they can do in terms of youth programs. And I hope that I would want to encourage that to increase even more. But I do think the city needs to direct funding to the youth. Without the funding to do it, it's just a wish.
Thank you. Comments, Mr. Leitzell?
Yeah, this was similar to another question that you had sent to me, so I'm going to give you the answer I have there. So get ready for some statistics. From 2013 to 2021, the budget has increased in these departments. Economic development, 223%. Planning and community development, 121%. Public works, 43.7%. City commission office, 36.4%. Fire, 23.5%. Police, 11%. City manager's office, 10%. The rec and youth services budget was cut this year by 37.2% and has only increased by 4.5% since 2013. So you want to solve this problem, it's high time to give the youth services the resources they need to service the youth.
Thank you. Mr. Mims?
You know, I am a strong advocate for young people, and I've mentored young people for several decades. And looking at how we can improve those opportunities is paramount to me, because I understand, even for myself, for my children and neighbors I've seen, there's a tremendous amount of benefit when young people are involved in those programs. One of the things that we're doing in the face of all these challenges, again, because I mentioned before that part of the money we got from issue 9 went directly into recreation and fixing up parks and all the things associated with that. Looking at ways that we can increase our partnerships with the schools and with other entities that are doing things with young people are things that we're doing that don't necessarily show up with regards to the budget process for recreation. The golf programs that I've been involved with in teaching and tutoring young people in terms of golf are things that people have come out of their pocket that don't even go into the register for the city.
Mr. Bowers, do you have additional comments on this question?
Well, I think all three of us are saying the same thing, aren't we? And we all believe that it's very, very important, and we believe that money ought to be redirected to accomplish these needs. There are, in the faith community, there are ministries directed towards this that are being very, very successful, and we commend them. Government doesn't have to be the total solution for every problem, but the solutions are there, so faith community arise.
Thank you. That's twice that we all have come in the second star I've denoted tonight. This question is for you, Mr. Leitzell. The LGBTQ youth, particularly transgender youth, are under attack by politicians, which is creating a significant emerging health issue. What specific steps will you take to ensure that the LGBTQ youth of Dayton are growing up in an affirmative city?
Well, I've always been one for human rights and fairness. And, you know, we did the Welcome Dayton program back in 2011 to help immigrants who were coming here to be successful. We did the domestic partner registry back in 2013 to assist with situations where people wanted to be able to have access to their loved ones in the hospital. I think we just need, as a city, to embrace these people and accept them for who they are and stand up to the rest of the country where people are fighting to restrict their rights. You know, when we did the Welcome Dayton thing, it was at a time in October of 2011 when all the states were going anti-immigrant. And I remember being on national television standing up for the rights of these immigrants. And I think as your mayor, I definitely stand up for the equal rights of anybody in the city, including these youth.
Bowers, question.
Well, Jesus said,
would you like for me to repeat it?
No, that's okay. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. So our responsibility is to love all people, and love covers a multitude of stuff. And in terms of transgender participating in women's sports, there are many more women athletes in sports by far than transgender people that identify as transgender. And I think we're doing a great disservice to women athletes by having them compete on a level scale. So I want to love everybody, but I think we need to be fair. I mean, it just seems like female athletes have been pushed aside by a minority. I don't think that's right. I think we need to respect the minority, but I sometimes our solutions create the opposite of love, and it creates attitudes towards
Mr. Mims, your comment?
The unfair treatment of the LGBTQ young people or adults perpetrated by a particular political party reflects a high level of insecurity on their part. It is totally unconscionable for anyone to treat someone less than you would want someone to treat you. And we see those things happening. We see the conversations, which is one of the reasons why on the commission, shortly after I got on the commission, we passed legislation to support all people, regardless of what their set of circumstances were, because those are people, we are people that God has chosen to put here on this earth, and there's no reason for anyone to be treated any differently.
Thank you. I'm going to go on to, there's so many questions in here, and try to get to additional ones without coming back for a rebuttal. This question, will be to Mr. Mims. What will be done to improve conditions amongst the homeless, including in shelters and places that are supposed to be safe zones?
That's a continuous growing problem that we have. Trying to put a dent in those situations to minimize the challenges that they experience is just a daunting task, especially when we look at the fact that we have children of those individuals as well. And it sort of challenges the quality of education that they can receive because of those set of circumstances. We have continuously worked with all of the organizations that we have in this city to find ways to increase the opportunities to serve those individuals, especially during times when we have bad weather. Those things are working. The other thing that works is to find ways to continue to find employment for those individuals, to get them trained, to get them in a position where they can go and be interviewed and to receive employment from those perspectives. It puts a dent in it. It doesn't solve it, but it helps make the situation a little bit better.
Thank you. Mr. Bowers, your comment?
Yes, ma'am. I moved into Dayton in 1979 to become the chaplain of the City Gospel Mission when it was located at 320 South Main Street. It's now called the Gospel Mission over on Burns Avenue, and their ministry is to poor people. When we did it at the City Gospel Mission, it was homeless people. We clothed them, we fed them, we gave them medical treatment, we transported them to the hospital. So I actually lived there for 12 months ministering and trying to meet needs, trying to give life skills so that their situation would not remain homeless. So very familiar with this problem. It's a mental health issue as well. So it's a critical issue. I think we need to, the faith community once more is doing a lot. Target Dayton is feeding so many people every single day, and other ministries as well. So they're doing some wonderful things. I'm open to solutions. I'm open to suggestions. Let's get the people together.
Your comment?
Yeah, the first thing anybody who's homeless needs is a permanent address. If they get a permanent address, they can get a social security card. With that, they can get a state ID. And with the state ID, they can get a bank account and they can get on their feet. In Europe, and I think I read something last week that in LA, they're doing this. I had mentioned shipping containers before. They're using shipping containers to create affordable housing for homeless people. And they've been doing it in Europe for a while. And I think they just started a project in LA. So instead of it costing $180,000 a unit, which is what we spent to do the facility on Helena Street, it ends up costing about $41,000 a unit. So we just need to be more effective and efficient with our money and come up with good solutions that solve a problem.
Thank you. Mr. Bowers, the west side of Dayton lacks mental health resources, as you just mentioned, with the closing of Daymont. As mayor, how will you work to add this resource availability back to assist in this important need for this community?
Well, let's get the mental health experts together. Let's get everybody who's working in that field, social workers, doctors, nurses, psychiatrists, psychologists, sociologists. Let's bring the people to the table, lay the problem out, and draw upon their expertise in this area. I mean, that's my answer to a lot of things, because I don't know the answer to that problem, but I believe that the resources and the brain power exists within this community to find viable solutions that are affordable. And I think we owe it to people who are struggling in the whole mental health thing to find solutions. So let's bring the people together. Let's find solutions together, and let's invest in those solutions.
Thank you. Mr. Leitzell?
I would, the first thing I would be interested in knowing, and I don't have the details, is why exactly they closed. Is it lack of funding? Is it lack of patience? Is it just lack of support? And I would tackle that avenue first. The other thing we do need to do, we have all these health partners around the city, Kettering and Premier, and we need to put them at the table and hold them accountable and say, this is a problem that's created because you're shutting things down, you're moving things around, and you're not servicing a section of the community that needs service. So once again, maybe we go to this shipping container idea and put these little satellite offices out in various neighborhoods where people can go to have their needs met.
Thank you. Mr. Mims?
Many of the problems that we experience here are just a result of the people here playing the hands that we were dealt. Columbus and Washington has been the place, if you will, for lack of another word, that has caused the investment in our mental health institutions. It's not a local decision to close our mental health institution. It was a state decision to do that. And just like the federal government, even when we look at individual young people who are in special needs or have special needs, it was the federal government that provided, or excuse me, said that they were going to require and fund special education students, and they never have. They've only required it, but they've only funded it to a point of 18%. So that tradition with the state and federal government has been a continuum, is why we have these problems here in the city of Dayton and other large cities across the nation.
Thank you. I'm going to stay with you, Mr. Mims. What is the infrastructure for residents to build power to communicate to the elected officials?
I just touched on a part of it. And one is to make sure you have the information to communicate with us. One, that you come to the respective meetings that we have. Not only do we have city commission meetings, but we also have work sessions. And then also invite us. I mean, a lot of us go all the time in different places. I mean, I know I'm all over the place, as well as many of my colleagues, to meet and greet and talk to people at so many different locations. But again, make sure that you don't stop here in the city limits of Dayton. Require your congressmen, require your senators, require your state reps, require those individuals to be a part of meetings here on a local basis, so that you can communicate to them what's happening. Far too often, as we talk about things here in Dayton, some of our legislators get amnesia on their trip to Columbus or on their trip to Washington. We should stay connected with them to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Thank you. Mr. Leitzell, your response?
Yeah, when I was the mayor, again, between 2010 and 2014, I was referred to as the people's mayor because I was highly responsive and probably the most accessible mayor that we had seen in Dayton in 20 years. Most people, if they called my office, were in front of me with less than a week, or they were told where I would be during the week so they could show up and talk to me there. If you go to gogarygo.com, which is my website, you can link to an email link and you can contact me and I'll actually respond. I'm actually very active on Facebook and on Nextdoor. And I tend to respond to things when I'm asked questions. And sometimes you may not like the answer, but I'll at least respond with the truth. I won't give you a line of BS or anything. I'll tell you the way it is. And I'll tell you how to solve a problem. So.
Mr. Bowers, thank you.
Well, somebody raised the question, so it must be an issue. And I'm a people person. Anybody that knows me, I'm a people person. I've been a pastor, church planter, a missionary to India, fire department. We're constantly, what are we doing? We're in homes all the time, interacting with people. So I love people. And so the interaction part of the mayor job is going to clearly one of my strengths. I genuinely care about people. I want an open door policy. Anything we can do to facilitate better communication. I loved it when we had priority boards. I think it was one of the things that was a distinctive of Dayton that really set us apart. And I'm not sure why, but most of the priority boards don't exist anymore. But that was a tremendous way for people in neighborhoods to communicate to their city government. As fire chiefs and fire captains, we got to go there to the priority board meetings and hear the citizens. So I think we should bring those back.
This question, I'm going to ask you gentlemen to raise your hand as to who would like to tackle it first. It has a lot of components with it, so listen carefully. What are your plans to bring good jobs that pay a real living wage for the people of Dayton? What are your plans to revitalize downtown? My questions are, if any of the candidates are willing to have a project labor agreement with the labor unions. All that work downtown was done by non-union, out-of-town contractors. Who wants to tackle that? Okay, don't all speak at once now.
I'll jump in.
I will.
Okay.
Who do you want to go first?
Mr. Mims, and then I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Leitzell, because the next question is all yours.
Okay. First, in terms of the good jobs, is again, it's evident when you look at the data, not opinions. You look at the data, you see that those things are happening more and more. The other piece that we sort of answered part of this before, in terms of working with our labor institutions, our labor unions, in terms of job training programs that we're doing with a lot of young people and with those who are not in the school system as well. And these apprenticeship programs are putting individuals in place to be able to make a living wage, a prevailing wage, so that they're in a position to take care of themselves and the family. The other issue in terms of downtown revitalization, man, I mean, it's going. I mean, you see the arcade, every place you turn, there are a lot of things that are happening. And we have situations where we have about a 95, 98% occupancy rate for every apartment or condo that we build downtown and in other parts of the city as well. Those things are happening. The project labor agreements, again, part of what we're doing with them is having these individuals work with us. The hospitals out at the Children's Medical, they have also required that we do some things in terms of local labor and prevailing wage contracts. That keeps dollars here in this community, so those dollars continue to circulate. Now, are we perfect with that, and can we do better? Yes, we can all do better. I recall looking to the school system, putting those things in place that were not in place before I became president of the school board, and so those make things better.
Thank you. Mr. Leitzell, your response?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that if you're not registered to do business with the city, then you don't get the bid notifications. And I think if you're getting tax dollars, then maybe the unions need to talk to the officials at the city to make sure that they're being made aware of who is doing the bidding, so that they can have a discussion with those businesses. You know, if it's a private entity, they can go with whoever they want. But if there's government money involved, maybe we as leaders should direct those union people to talk to the contractors who are getting the jobs, to let them at least be subcontracted or work in some areas. I mean, there has to be some better communication there. I think it's not government's job to fix this. It's our job to lead people to solve the problem themselves, I believe.
Thank you. Definitely don't want to leave you out, Mr. Bowers, for your comments.
Thank you. Well, I believe I'm the only one of the three, but I'm not sure of this, that has been a part of a union. I am part of the International Association of Firefighters. Okay, Mr. Mims, thank you. So both of us, but so I'm a union guy and I believe in unions. So I think that I don't want to discourage a union participation. I want to encourage union participation. I want to encourage union wages. I think it helps the city, and it gives an area of expertise and quality work. Mr. Leitzell has been mentioning that when you have a whole commission that's represented by one party, that's a very bad thing. I agree with Gary on that point, and I do believe that the Democratic Party has left the workers. You know, I don't know anybody that, I know very few people who are in my union that are voting positions.
This question is directed to you, Mr. Leitzell. The audience states that you have spoken many times on what you did as mayor. What did you do for the west side of Dayton?
Okay. Well, we got quite a bit of development done over there. If you remember, Germantown and Broadway was pretty much an empty space, and they built all those townhouses there. We also got housing built over in Wolf Creek. So if you talk about housing, we did that. I guess, you know, when I was mayor, I inspired the community to step up to the plate and do things that they certainly weren't doing before I was mayor. And I tried to organize people to create a sense of community. Now, I was over there. I remember helping the NAACP do a cleanup on West 3rd. I was helping Mr. Webb try to form his Funk Hall of Fame. And I was the only member of that commission sticking my neck out to help promote that in the early stages. The other things I've done for all Daytonians, like I said, if you pay your water bill online, my wife was responsible for making that happen. She nagged me every quarter and said, why can't I pay my water bill online? If you do recycling, I made that happen. If you check the crime maps, or if you file police reports online because you don't know who broke into your car, I made that happen from personal experience. So I made things that people take for granted now a reality. You know, the Facebook's likes went from 1,000 to 17,000 in those 4 years, and now I think it's 34,000. So you have communication between the citizens and the city. I think I opened that up so that we would be more available to the citizens. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of little things that add up to the big things.
Thank you, Mr. Leitzell. As I indicated, that question was just for him, and we want to still give you your opportunity to put that plug in of Go Gary Go. What was it again?
GoGaryGo.com.
Okay. Go Gary Go. Okay,
Go.
Mr. Bowers.
I just would add that I think people ought to vote for Gary's wife for mayor.
Right.
So,
Are you in favor of creating a community civil oversight board where more accountability can be had with policing issues that we have here in Dayton?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it. It's not a yes or no answer. I'd need to know what we mean by what we say that is. I do believe in neighborhood policing. I do believe in relational policing. I'm a big supporter of police officers getting to know the neighborhoods in which they're patrolling and vice versa. So I think that would, you know, as in anything, relationships are everything, aren't they? If you know somebody and you trust somebody, the color of the skin doesn't matter. It's all about building relationships. So I don't know how to answer your question because I don't know exactly what that would look like or what that would lead to. I need to know more about it. I'm not a guy that makes hasty decisions, yes or no, or this or that. Let's find out what that's all about. But what I want to emphasize is relational policing. And as I've talked to the police officer, that gives them the greatest job satisfaction. They are not opposed to this. They long for this type of policing. But when you're so short-staffed and you're constantly being cut, it's very, very hard to press ahead in those areas. When you have 11 police officers on duty from 3 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock in the morning, you're just way understaffed. So relational policing is the answer. I don't know about this other entity that you're bringing up.
Okay, thank you. Same question, Mr. Leitzell, are you in favor of creating a community civil oversight board where more?
Yes, yes, because I understand the situation. If you file a grievance or a complaint against the police officers, for whatever reason, the people that oversee it are the police, and they'll give you a response. And if you appeal that response, it's overseen by the police. So basically what's happening is the chief of police gets to determine whether or not you're going to be heard. And that's wrong. One person shouldn't have that power. It should go to an outside group of citizens. You could even put an ex-felon on that board, as far as I'm concerned, to oversee what the problem is, to understand it better, and to make a fairer decision in some of these complaint cases.
Thank you. Mr. Mims, same question.
Yeah, real quickly, that was actually one of the set of recommendations that have been put in place or suggested by the CPC. And it was one of those that was reinforced, if you will, by the reform process that we've just moved to the next stage on. And that's primarily for the reasons that were mentioned before, is you want to make sure you have as much independency as you can with regards to those situations where citizens who are approached and they feel unfairly approached, to be able to have a place where they can go to have those situations reviewed and to have action taken on behalf of the citizen. So again, with some of those more than 150 recommendations, that is certainly clearly one of those that's very strong.
Thank you. These next two.
Could I add one thing?
Certainly, why not?
Thank you, sir. In the fire department, the fire department took citizens' complaints very, very seriously. You want to get in trouble in the fire department? Have a citizen complaint lodged against you. The upper administration, all the way down through the ranks, we took citizens' complaints very, very seriously, because those are the people we're serving. And we, constant emphasize, treat this older lady like she's your grandmother. Treat this lady like she's your mother. Treat these people like they're your brother or sister. So that once more, that's a relational aspect that can be trained. And it's a culture that people catch that, even if they're not used to it.
Question. I just want to give you 1 minute each to respond so we can kind of wrap this up. The first question is, when the police union contract comes up for renegotiation, what will you do? Mr. Leitzell.
Well, I'd have to see the contract to know exactly what I would do. I'm just trying to be fair. I'm not privy to that information. And it's actually not the mayors and the commissioners that draft up those contracts. We actually have staff at City Hall that do the union negotiations, and then it comes back to us. So I can't really answer that question until I would see the details.
Thank you. Mr. Mims?
It's an easy question for me to answer, because a lot of what we have discussed with the this whole reform process is filtered down and turned over to our city manager, who's involved in the negotiation process with our HR team. So the will of the people will be filtered to the certainly through the commissioners, the mayor, as well as to the city manager, as well as to the HR department.
Thank
So
you.
the will of the people will be discussed.
Thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No
Mr.
problem.
Bowers, same question.
Yeah, I agree with Gary. It's hard to address something that you don't know. It's kind of an unknown. But I am a big believer in public safety, which is both police and fire. These people are not our enemies. They're there. They're the first line of defense against medical emergencies, against car accidents, against hazmat incidents, against drownings, against shootings, against stabbings, against drug overdoses. They're the first line of defense. So I'm not in favor of defunding the police. I can't even imagine living in a city that doesn't have a police department. I think we need to invest in our police officers. We need to, like I said before, reinstitute the interview process and get rid of the bad apples at the interview process. I don't think there's that many bad apples in either the police or fire presently, but without the interview process, problems arise. So I'm all for public safety, because I think it's one of the main ingredients to getting business to invest in our communities.
Mr. Mims, excuse me, how would you address the failure of the city manager to promote economic inclusion in projects and for the West Side? And for the West Side?
Okay, I didn't hear the first part. Start over, because the bell was still ringing in my ear. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Okay, let me wait. Clear your ears. Ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
How would you address the failure of the city manager to promote economic inclusion in projects in and for the West Side?
Okay. Well, first of all, that's stated in the negative, and that's not necessarily the case. What we have done, as I mentioned earlier, is the fact that we put the onus on the city manager to put on our department heads to give support to the HRC director to hold those individuals accountable to identifying and hiring contractors that are reflective of this community, because we want those dollars to circulate around this community. When those things are not happening to that degree, we will have those discussions in terms of the evaluations that we give those individuals to make sure that we hold them accountable to make those things happen. One of the problems that we have, as we mentioned earlier, the pool of local and or minority workers is not as great as it once was, unfortunately, some 30 years ago, because we have more and more young people taking those vocational arts type classes that put them in a position to get those jobs. That is not the case now. We're trying to rebuild that.
Thank you. Mr. Bowers?
Mr. Mims's answer confused me about the question, so maybe I misunderstood the question. Would you repeat it, please?
No problem. How would you address the failure of the city manager to promote economic inclusion in projects in and for the West Side?
Yeah, I guess.
Let me just first say that, Mr. Bowers, respectfully,
Mr. Mims,
it's your confusion, not mine.
Mr. Mims, thank you. Mr. Mims, thank you. Mr. Bowers, go ahead and respond.
Mr. Mims, you might be absolutely right. I don't, I don't know if I want to lay this at the feet of the city manager. I mean, I'm not in the inner workings of the city government presently, so I don't know for sure if we're placing the blame on the right person. I don't know what she has done to address that issue. So I agree with Mr. Mims's answer in the sense that training programs and things like that are all essential. But I actually don't know enough about what has taken place at the commission, city manager level, mayor level, presently in this past administration to lay the blame at her feet.
Thank you. Mr. Leitzell, your response.
The role of the city commission is to direct policy. And if they're not out in the community talking to regular people who have these issues, they're never going to be able to direct policy properly. I met with the city manager every week and we discussed community issues. So there was a direct line from me to the city manager. I don't think the current administration does that with this city manager. And as long as you have one party control on that commission and they like the city manager, they're not going to fire her. So if you put a couple of people on there that aren't controlled by that same group of people, then they can threaten the city manager and say, the two of us don't like what you're doing. And if we can get a third, you're gone and we'll replace you. That's the power of the commission. But right now, there's no accountability. They can do whatever they want and nobody is going to hold them accountable.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Mims, did you have a 10-second comment you wanted to get in there?
Oh, no, I got it. Mr.
Okay.
Bowers, I'm good.
All right.
It's just, I just wanted to clarify the fact that.
So you do have a 10-second comment. Go ahead.
Well, I didn't want him to blame me for his confusion on that issue. So we got it.
Okay, so we're going to go to our closing statements. You will have 2 minutes and 30 seconds each. I would ask that you include this last question that came in from the audience. It said, what makes you a better choice than your opponents? In your response, we will begin with Mr. Bowers.
I was afraid you were going to say that. So
only because, Mr. Bowers, you were the first one on. And I believe the people that come first should end first.
Okay, there you go. All right. Well, actually, I've gotten to know Mr. Mims and Mr. Leitzell a little bit during these debates. I consider them men of integrity and good candidates. I believe I'm the best candidate. I'm the only one that's a non-politician. I'm the only one that I've been in more homes in the 30-year career as a fire chief and a fire lieutenant, fire captain, et cetera, than all the other commissioners, all the other candidates combined. Being in homes in crisis situations allows you to develop a leadership style that you can't develop anywhere else. You can't get it by going to school. I don't really think you can get it by being in the position of mayor or being in the position of commissioner. Crisis management is learned and leadership is learned in the trenches, so to speak. So I've been doing this for 30 years. I love the citizens of Dayton. I was a compassionate fire chief. I listened to the people. We were there to meet their needs. I'm not a politician and I don't have a party affiliation. I'm an independent and I am an independent person. I am a man of faith. And I certainly believe that many of the solutions as we press ahead simply do not have human solutions. We need divine help. And that's why one of my big thrusts is to bring the faith community in West Dayton with the faith community in East Dayton, to bring these pastors together. These men are and women are very, very relational. They've also have been there in the trenches with very, very hurting people for decades. Let's draw upon their expertise. Let's draw upon their credibility. And just having relationships with them will give us credibility. So I think those are some of the things that separate me from my opponents. And I just would encourage you to vote for me on May 4th, because I am not a politician, but I am a servant. I believe in servant leadership. This is not about getting to be the mayor for name recognition. I was enjoying my retirement. I was enjoying building relationships with the faith community, but I felt a deep calling upon me because of all the division in our country. So I could curse the darkness or I could light a light. I chose to light a light by running for mayor, and we've been very well received.
Thank you very much. Mr. Leitzell, your closing remarks?
Yeah, I don't think I can talk for 2.5 minutes though. GoGaryGo.com. That's my website. You can link to my blog. I've got articles on there that have been there for 20 years. I also have a house blog called This Old Crack House that talks about the renovation of the house that I'm in, and you can see the parlor behind me. I do want to say this. When I was mayor, what I tried to do is establish trust with the staff. I challenged them to go out and make mistakes, because if you weren't making mistakes, you weren't doing your job properly, and I covered for them. I said that the media won't come after you, they're going to come after me. And back in 2010, the media was coming after me for really silly stuff. But I do want to say this: you can't gain the trust of your employees at City Hall if you want to give yourself a 20 to 50% pay increase as a commissioner or a mayor. That is something you're going to be voting on May 4th. It's on the ballot. They want to tie their salaries in to the county commission salary, 50% for the commissioners, 75% for the mayor, and the county's salary for 2022 is going to be $109,577. So these commissioners want to give themselves a pay raise from $46,000 a year to $55,000, and the mayor wants to give himself a pay raise from $55,000 a year to $82,000 a year. For Mr. Mims, it would be a $34,500 increase in his salary if you vote yes on this issue. So I'm urging you to vote no. I don't think it's right, and I don't think it's right because staff are being asked to take cuts. So I'm just interjecting that. I was the people's mayor. I listen to people. I talk to people. I talk to the city manager. I make things happen. I also want to point out that I was the first candidate to file his petitions on December 3rd before the current mayor announced that she wasn't going to run again. So I was the only one of the candidates here that was willing to challenge Mayor Whaley. There was no way I was going to allow her to run unopposed again as she did in 2017. So for me, I'm a principled person. I filed as a matter of principle so that you, the voters, had a choice this year. And so, I'm one of those choices. So I would ask that you vote for me May 4th. Again, I'm easily accessible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leitzell, for someone who couldn't talk for 2.5 minutes. You did.
It's the first time the bell's gone for me.
Last, but definitely not least, Mr. Mims.
Well, as I mentioned before, I like to think about big ideas. And the $528 million project to build all new schools in Ohio, was a part of my work as a government relations person for the Dayton Public Schools, which was part of the outgrowth of the Senate Bill 272, which I was the lead lobbyist on for the state of Ohio to build all new schools in Ohio. That created a tremendous amount of boom as far as resources, the dollars that circulated around this community. The state paid 61% of that 528 million. The local district paid 39%. Of that 39%, businesses paid 60%. That left the citizens of Dayton paying 15% of a $528 million project. Those are the type of ideas that I like to talk about what we can do for Dayton to make Dayton great. The types of things that brought my family here, that brought other families here, that caused people to want to come here, to settle here, to raise their families here, and to be able to be educated here with the great set of educational institutions that we have, with all the college network that we have in the city of Dayton. It puts us in a very unique set of situations where we can continue to accelerate on the progress that we're making as far as this city of Dayton is concerned. So even with all this warts that we have, Dayton is still a place of dreams for a lot of individuals because they see themselves here. They love it here. We have a great set of music opportunities. We have a great set of athletic opportunities. We have a great set of building opportunities for young people who grow old here, get gray hair, see their grandchildren raised, and put them in a position where they can make a high quality set of life contribution to society because of all the resources that we've been able to pull together because of the great partnerships that we have in the city of Dayton. The crises that we had, you know, looking at the Klan, looking at the tornado, looking at the shooting, looking at the pandemic, we have been able to survive those situations because of the great partnerships that we have developed in the city of Dayton. So as mayor, I will win, and I will continue this work to make sure that Dayton continues its greatness along the path of utopia. Thank you.
Mr. Mims. Thank you to all of our candidates for participating in Westside Democratic Club debate. I'm sure our Facebook audience, as well as those who have tuned in via the Westside's website, we're pleased to be able to hear your comments, to hear your platforms, to hear your passion as you spoke about things that you were going to do. What we can only hope and pray for at this point is that the one who is elected will do those things. It has been an honor to serve as your moderator. I want to encourage our Facebook audience to join Westside Democratic Club, look for events, participate to hear more of the political arena within on the West Side and how it affects us. Once again, the next week, next Thursday, tune in for the primary debate for the city commission. The candidates hear their viewpoints as you can make your appropriate decisions on who you would like to vote for city commissioner. I thank you again to all. Good evening and good night.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I like your website too.
Each one of your doors. I'm going to be knocking on each one of your doors to tell you the things that I need. And then the one who is becomes mayor, I'll have you put it in writing, the things that I need.
Okay, you're welcome. Come on over.
Thanks again.